This comes from Anonymous in Florida. There seems to be tension between the aesthetic demands of traditional Catholicism and the emphasis on emotional well-being in modern psychology. How can we avoid both stoicism and self-indulgence? And where does spiritual direction and therapy intersect responsibly?
Well, spiritual direction encompasses the whole person, so it would be in some way, St. Thomas talks about the powers of the soul, and he talks about all those different things that go into comprising the human person, so that hopefully modern psychology, if it's really a good psychology, is basing itself on how God has made the human person. I don't think you can say that about Freud or any of these, atheistic modernist psychologists, but there have been some who have been guided by St. Thomas and other Catholics, how the church understands the nature of the person, the soul, that can be helpful. But I think that we always have to understand that spiritual direction ultimately is to get you to heaven. So, and therapy doesn't necessarily talk about helping you to get to heaven. There can be therapists who tell you to do something that is not even good for you to get to heaven because it's not, they're not guided by God's law. Sometimes they'll tell people to do things which are immoral practices in order for them to somehow get over one addiction, take up another addiction, which is not a good idea. So I think that's where you have to understand that a lot of issues, side issues, emotional issues, and traumas will be healed by just practicing the spiritual life. I remember a sister friend of mine, a religious sister, said she was tired of having all these conferences about healing. And she said, I'm kind of getting sick of hearing about healing. I want to hear about the spiritual life. There's more to the spiritual life than the psychological aspects of healing. If you're practicing the spiritual life, praying, trying to grow closer to God, it should be, by its very nature, helping you to overcome traumas or things that you've experienced in your life that have wounded you. That's the whole point about Christ, is the greatest physician. He's the divine physician. And he's also knows your psychology better than anyone else. So I guess that I would say is psychology and spiritual direction may have some intersecting points, but both psychology may be talking about helping a person to live a somewhat ordered life, but it may not necessarily ordering them to get to heaven, whereas spiritual direction is supposed to be helping you to overcome vices and practice virtue and to go closer to Christ and to arrive at your ultimate goal, which is to love God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So it may have a much more higher, it has, of course, a much more higher purpose. But psychology has its helps. It does help people. But all that should be helping them, hopefully, to therefore practice the spiritual life and overcome whatever these obstacles are so that they can grow closer to God.